Welcome back to Kempf Fitness Professional. My name is John, and this is another hybrid workout tutorial. We are circuiting a lower body exercise, an upper body exercise, and a core exercise together, performing 3 sets of each in a row, then resting, adding a rep to each, and doing it again. So the first exercise, my lower body exercise, is a barbell good morning. This is a hip hinge exercise that really focuses on the hamstrings. So I'm doing 5 reps here. Notice that I'm keeping nice extension in my lumbar spine. I do not want to round my low back on this exercise. I'm trying to push my butt back behind my heels as far as I can as I lean my shoulders forward and use the weight as a counterweight to help prevent me from falling over. Then I can use my hamstrings to pull me back up to the standing position. So that's 5 reps on my good morning. Next exercise is a handstand push-up. So I'm using a step to support me here as a regression from a feet on the wall handstand push-up. And I'm using handles to allow me to get a little more depth in my push-up instead of putting my hands on the floor. It's a little friendlier on the wrist as well. So I've got very little weight in my hands here, in my feet, and I'm loading up my shoulders and my arms in that push-up position. I'm doing 5 reps there, and then I'm going on to my core exercise, which is 5 reps of toes to bar. This is just a hanging leg lift variation where you show your butt forward as you lean back, trying to curl your tailbone up. The emphasis here is creating posterior pelvic tilt and lumbar flexion to really engage the lower part of the rectus abdominis, the core muscles that are what you would know as the six-pack. So that V muscle that a lot of people want is getting really activated there in the toe to bar because it's being activated by you curling the pelvis up. And then I'm just going to repeat that same circuit again 2 more times through 5 reps for each exercise. And I'm not taking any rest in between, but I'm also not racing from exercise to exercise. So same movement here. I don't know why I went the other way. I was just trying out camera angles, but I'm pushing my hips back. I've still got full contact with the floor on my foot. I have a soft bend in my knee there. That's a key emphasis on your good morning. Do not lock out your knees. Do not round your back. And then I'm coming back to the handstand push-up. I have my elbows outside of my wrists in this position. You'll notice that creates almost a 90-degree angle at the elbow joint in the bottom position. That is very similar to an overhead press or a chest press where you're creating optimal shoulder mechanics, pressing mechanics, I should say. It's a little friendlier on the elbow. I could still go a little wider with my hands. So depending on who you are, you'll have to play with your hand position here. I've also got the handles turned in a little bit. You can see that. So I'm a little more externally rotated in my grip position instead of having my hands stuck in that very forward position. I just feel a little more comfortable in that position. Just as if you had dumbbells for a chest press and you were to turn your palms very slightly at a little bit of a diagonal angle so they're facing, just externally rotates the shoulder and opens up that front of the girdle a little bit better and allows for more ease in that press. Okay, big thing with the toes to bar is just lower yourself with control and avoid using momentum to swing back with your legs and kick forward. So I actually put that step behind me as a heel stop, so that way I know I can't kick back farther to then use that momentum to swing me up forward. Especially as you get tired, that really becomes easy to do. I am making sure that I lift my chest when I come down into this good morning position. That's going to help me to ensure that I maintain extension in my lumbar spine. And notice that soft bend in the knee. I'm not locking out my knees, but they're not actively bending through the movement. All the movement is occurring at the hip. Chest up, hips back are the 2 main cues there. And then this is my 3rd set through. I'm going to go from the good morning to the handstand push-up. Again, with the handstand push-up, you can regress and progress this very easily by changing the height of the step that you're on. So if having your feet elevated at all is too tough, then likely I wouldn't progress you to a handstand push-up in the first place. I would likely have you do more overhead pressing, say with a single arm with a kettlebell or a dumbbell, but you could always do a more downward dog press position where your feet are more on the floor. But to make this harder, what would you do? You would just elevate the surface higher so your hips are more stacked over your shoulders. You have more of a vertical spine, and you're working yourself up progressively to the feet up on the wall. And doing a couple feet up on the wall handstand push-ups for me at this current point in time is difficult, and I likely would have mechanical breakdown of form if I were to put it in a circuit in this fashion where I'm not resting and I'm going 3 exercises in a row. And I'd rather have clean, nice reps and focus on getting my heart rate up more so in this circuit fashion than I am trying to increase my 1 rep max strength on my handstand push-ups. So this is my 3rd set here. Now you're going to rest anywhere from 3 to 5 minutes. Go ahead and pause this video. When you're done with your rest, return. Okay, so now we are to set number 2. I rested for 2.5 minutes. You can rest longer. I just chose that because this is a light weight for me on good mornings, and my feet aren't that high up on my handstand push-ups. So this circuit wasn't overly difficult for me. The hardest part was likely the toes to bar reflecting back. But now all I did different is I'm just adding a rep to all 3 exercises. Instead of doing 3 sets of 5, now I'm doing 3 sets of 6 of everything. So that's 6 good mornings, same cues, chest up, squeeze the elbows in tight, keep the hips high as you push them back behind you, arch in the back, soft bend in the knee. Then handstand push-up. My goal here is to really push my armpits back to my toes and get my hips forward, shoulders back. What that does is it allows for a more true vertical press because I'm stacking my hips directly over my shoulders with the intention of eventually getting my feet up over my hips. So this is, in that sense, just that regression that you're looking to build towards. The higher those feet get up, using boxes or steps or whatever, the more you can lean forward with the pelvis and push back with the shoulders and get that vertical stack from the hip over the shoulders, shoulders over the wrists. Okay, notice that especially on this second round through, as the set continues, I start to get more and more fatigued, and these toes to bar are definitely the most difficult part for me. But I'm using some grip pads. They're just actually an old yoga mat, a cheap $5 yoga mat from TJ Maxx that we cut into a bunch of little squares. It dramatically improves your grip strength. So it's like using straps, but they're quick and convenient, and you don't have to wrap them up and have it on your wrist and pull on your wrist funny. You literally just slap them over the bar. And that is a metal bar, which has, it's much more slippery than, say, like a grippy rubber pull-up bar. So having those really helps. I highly recommend getting an old yoga mat for $5 and then cutting those squares. It's just a little gym hack tip that will help you, say, with your deadlifts and your dumbbell carries. They work really well. I use them with my clients and for myself. And it's a cheap and quick. They're cheaper than you would get a pair of straps. They're much more easy to travel with and put on and off. So highly recommend. Okay, this is going through round 2. Again, constantly always making little adjustments to whatever movement I'm doing so I can get more optimal position, more optimal mechanics, better activation, better performance, and a lower risk of injury. So the better your position, the better force output you're going to have, which in terms of building muscle and losing fat, if you're generating more force, you're doing more work. And if you're in better position, you're much less likely to get injured because everything's doing what it's supposed to be doing and nothing is being overworked or underworked. In that sense, you're creating more balance. And then back to the back to the toes to bar. If the toes to bar start to get too tough, you're doing the circuit, and by the last couple sets, you're really feeling it, what would you do? You would just bend the knees, turning it into a bent knee toe to bar instead of a straight knee. And if that's too much of a progression, then you could go one leg. But at that point, it would be more efficient if you were to just regress the difficulty of the angle of the movement, which would be essentially putting you on the floor on your back. So you're fighting gravity less of the way. When you're doing the hanging leg raises, you're fighting gravity from the bottom position all the way up in a full 180-degree range of motion. When you're on your back, you're only going 90 degrees from the position, or at least gravity is only fighting you 90 degrees of the way. So last round through, set number 3, chest up, hips back, squeeze the elbows, the shoulder blades together to lock in that upper shoulder girdle, soft bend in the knee. Notice I'm really leaning back with the hips. Try to get that butt back as far as you can to really get a big stretch on the hamstring. And I recommend going light on these, especially if you haven't done them consistently or if you're coming back from an extended training break, because they will make your hamstrings very sore. Similar to a single leg deadlift, if you haven't done those in a long time or are new to the exercise, they can often create a very large delayed onset muscle soreness, DOMS effect on the hamstrings. Okay, last set of handstand push-ups here. This is where I was really starting to feel it. Push the armpits back to the toes, lift the butt up in the air as much as you can. I'm being as light on my feet as I can. I'm actually up on my toes here, so I'm just emphasizing trying to put all the weight into my arms and have as little weight in my feet as possible. And you'll notice at the very end there of each rep too, I'm pushing my armpits. I'm emphasizing that lockout at the top where I push my armpits back to my toes just to make sure I'm getting more and more of that true overhead press, vertical press position. I'm hurting here. Fatigue, push through, last set, big breaths. Okay, I'm using that recovery breathing strategy that you've probably heard me talk about before, where you breathe all the way up into the collarbones, lifting your chest and leaning your head back ever so slightly. Last set, hanging toe to bar. And if your toes don't get to the bar, no big deal. It's not about getting your toes to the bar. It's just a matter of curling the pelvis forward underneath you, getting that lumbar flexion and posterior pelvic tilt so you know that you're really getting those lower rectus abdominis. You'll get quite a good latin serratus activation here too from holding yourself in that position. So that's 3 sets of 6, second round of this hybrid circuit.